Hello and welcome to the Cosmic Prayer this week here on New Thought Media Network. My name is Reverend.Laura, and I am here again sharing the knowing of prayer, understanding more about prayer with an inspirational super guest every week. A wondrous guest comes on to talk about prayer, their experience of prayer, how it's informed their life, and how they would like to share and teach their wisdom around prayer with the viewers here today. So welcome here wherever you are. Feel free to write your name in the comments or any comments that you have. We love interaction here on the Cosmic Prayer. So we're here to hear your thoughts and find out more about Reverend Dr. Michelle Medrano and her idea of prayer. Reverend Michelle she received her ministerial degree at the School of Ministry at Mile High in 1991. And she has, from there, she was hired as an assistant minister at Huntington Beach Church of Religious Science, where she served for 4 years. And then she moved on to become senior minister of the New Vision Center for 17 years. Wow. In 2013, Reverend Dr. Michelle was invited back to Mile High to serve as an associate minister. And in the spring of 2019, she joined Reverend Joshua Reeves as co-minister leadership for Mile High Church. Reverend Dr. Michelle begins her many years of experience in successful ministry and her years of powerful service in our international denomination. And I am just feeling grateful, blessed, and excited to be here with you today, Reverend Dr. Michelle. Thank you for being on the Cosmic Prayer.
Thank you, Reverend Laura. It's great. I'm grateful to be here with you too. Looking forward to our conversation.
Looking forward to our conversation. And you're looking very complete there in your office at the Mile High Church. I'm loving the background. And yes.
Sparkles today. This is kind of a holiday thing. My Santa Claus band, other things, just to keep me in the mood for the holidays.
Oh, I love it. And we're entering into that, the season of light. So many beautiful celebrations and times to remember who we are as light. And I'm really interested in you and your experience with prayer. I mean, you just as I was reading your bio here and what you have done and your dedication to serve in service as a minister of religious science. What is it about prayer that you think actually does it that changes people's lives? Because you must have witnessed so many different people's demonstrations of using prayer. What would you say is the common thing that, wow, if you're doing this works?
Well, I think I would probably agree with our founder, Ernest Holmes, that the best element in prayer has to be conviction. Conviction can look like, to me, those moments of intense desire to manifest something. And from the religious science standpoint, can look like those moments of intense faith in the power of our word and how the law of mind works. In Science of Mind, as you know, we have a very specific way that we teach about prayer, a specific format that we teach about prayer. And I personally believe that no prayer is ineffective, that all prayer can change an outcome, can change us, can change the energy of something that's happening. I just personally happen to believe that the way we do prayer and we teach prayer, that's a systematic recipe for transformation, is very effective, extremely effective. But I would say no matter what tradition one comes from, that conviction is the number one thing that has to happen. It's and that's an energy of knowing that in that moment of prayerfulness, I'm communing with the God of my understanding. I'm communing with the God of my heart, the God I believe exists in the universe, and I am partnering with that presence to create a different outcome than what is occurring. And and conviction is that sense of faith. There's so many faithful prayers all over the world that have used prayer to change themselves and situations. So that's the most important thing to me.
Yes, even when as you say, there are so many individuals around the world who have used prayer in a different way as I would use it, or you would use it as a religious science minister or practitioner, or somebody that is a student of. We're all students of. But I mean, so the conviction is like, it is done unto you as you believe, which I remember Ernest Holmes, you know, that's one of his major quotes. And the video of him standing up in the, you know, saying, giving a TV show and saying that at the beginning of his show, it is done unto you as you believe. So as we believe with that conviction, we're actually changing something within our own consciousness. We're transforming and transmuting. And it's the belief that's really integral here.
Yes, and I'd say even beyond belief, and you know, Holmes is quoting Jesus in that quote, because that's what Jesus said when he talked about living in life, and Jesus was a very prayerful teacher from everything we can see. But I think that that belief is synonymous to maybe a faithfulness, and that when people have a clear sense of faith in their method of prayerfulness, that's why it works, because they believe, hey, if I pray to God, I will possibly shift the outcome of the situation. And in Science of Mind, we believe if we pray from oneness and affirmatively, we can change the situation. And that has to do, you're right, with our sense of belief in the power of our word, our sense of belief and conviction in the oneness that we live, move, and have our being in. And when all that is very strong, powerful outcomes can truly occur.
Yes. And it's really interesting, because I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about somebody that really believes in God, and seeing and knowing God as out there, and finding it hard for themselves to get a sense of the connection that's always here. And so do you believe that for somebody that even can't get to that place of feeling the oneness, of knowing the oneness, of having that absolute, just embedded, embodied experience of oneness, that prayer can still work if they're praying and Absolutely. They believe it could work? Yeah.
Absolutely. And we hear through the sacred texts of various traditions and the human experience and conversation and stories of people from all traditions feeling as though their prayer impacted something. And so yes. I do think that, again, it's effectiveness. It's not making things wrong or right. It's not saying that a person who believes God is out there is wrong, and those of us who believe God is an energy of oneness are right. It's more about, in my world, what I believe is effective versus what someone else might believe is effective. And that has impact. That belief has impact on my outcome, no matter what tradition I'm from.
And so even when I pray, and I pray in the stillness of my own, or of mind within me, and I'm not even sometimes saying it out loud, and then things change. It's like, it's not about shouting and screaming it. It's a deeper knowing, that conviction that can even be a whisper, and yet the knowing is there.
Yes, and it can be like I think Holmes he talks about, he's a quote that I use often in memorials about the flashlight, the flash-like grandeur of a moment of conviction, a moment of faith, a moment of being able to say, yeah, it's done. I mean, we are known for having these big, long, we practitioners and ministers, beautiful, eloquent, lovely, full of lots of words, prayers, and they're beautiful and they're wonderful. But they can't match a single moment like you're talking about of, yeah, it's done. I feel like
it's done.
Just because I'm wordy about it doesn't mean that whatever is
It's
creative energy is saying, well, you did a great prayer. I loved all your words. I'm going to give you the goodie.
yes. You passed the English language test or whatever language.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Reverend.Laura Halleck came on to the Wisdom of the Mystics show a couple of months ago, and she was talking about Joel Goldsmith and how the click, it was just a click inside, and I really resonate with that. It's like, oh, that's so juicy.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in that place, and then nothing can allow me to believe or to know that it isn't happening, because I really feel it and know it. Yeah, beyond a feeling even.
Yes, and Joel even says, he's interesting because we have steps that we do in our prayer process that just, I think, help us to stay focused. There's no magic to the steps. They just help us to stay focused. And one of those steps, as you well know, is a step where we really spend time using our words and our energy and even imagery or our breath to help us feel and sense the connectedness and the oneness of life. Well, Joel says, if you really get that right, do you really need anything else?
Yeah.
You even need to go on. Like he theorizes and challenges us all to say, if you felt totally, completely at one with the source of creation, is there anything more you would need? And I know that reading that often students, and even I have thought, well, geez, then why do we spend all this time outlining all the detail that we want? Because I have gotten to that point in prayer at times where it's just like, oh, wow, this feeling of oneness and that's enough. I'm just going to stay here for a while. Who cares about that thought I wanted? I just want to be at one, because there are some theories. I think even Deepak Chopra says that every desire we have that we might enter into with prayer is a desire for a reconnection with the divine, of an experience of the divine. And once you get that in prayer, it just feels sometimes like the thing I thought was so important. Important. Whatever. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
That feeling.
And maybe we can get, maybe that's good to go through the steps and go through all of that, and so that we can then realize, actually, I got there before that and I don't need that. It's like, I can just do it this way.
Yes.
And I've often done that, the absolute treatment, where, you know, really, really focusing and zoning in on the recognition and then unifying and knowing. And it just feels so yummy being there. And I actually don't want to move on. It's like, I'm fine here. I'm fine here, feeling good. So, but I can realize the 5 steps though, because I know there are times in my life where that, knowing that, the realization part, that gives me a sense of that there is something that can be changed. There's something that can be transformed within me.
Yes.
And that feels good when it doesn't look good out there.
Yes.
Well, out there, you know.
And often here's the thing that I would say that is a very subtle thing about prayer, that no matter what tradition you come from can be challenging, is that often when we are in a desperate desire for something, it's not just, oh, it would be really nice to be making a little more money, or it would be really nice to get over my cold that I know I will eventually get over, or something that maybe doesn't challenge us, but if our child is sick, or we ourselves are ill or given a diagnosis that's really scary, or we're running out of money and afraid that we're not going to be able to pay our bills or have a house over our head, or whatever it might be, there can be in those moments of, oh my God, please help me, that kind of petitionary prayer. While I would still stand on what I said earlier, there's no wrong way to pray. One of the challenging things with a prayer like that is that the energy with which we pray it is often fear and desperation. And so the beauty of learning spiritual mind treatment, in my mind, most especially when the stakes are high, the fear level is high, or the stress level is high, is that if we've really learned and practiced the first 2 steps, which the first step is all about settling into what we know and believe and have faith that the divine is. And then, as I said, finding that presence that is everywhere within ourselves and feeling our oneness, then I feel like at the very least, our nervous system gets settled down, our desperate thoughts get settled down, and the place from which we then affirm our good is out of a greater place of confidence and partnership with the universe rather than desperate begging of the universe to please take this pain or suffering away from me or my beloved one. And yet I totally know that even with all I know about prayer and even talking about this, there have been these moments in my life where I also have prayed that prayer of desperation. Please, please keep this person safe. Please help me do what's right now. Please take this cup away from me, as Jesus even prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane. This man who taught and prayed his whole ministry about partnership with the divine and said over and over how the Father is within and God is within. And that moment of desperation said, please just take this cup away from me. Please, I don't want to do this. This isn't what I want. And then eventually fell into surrender, we can see. And I think when it's almost like if we were to come across a big field of tall vines and we wanted to go from point A to point B and we'd never traverse that field, the first time we go through, we might part the ways, we might use a little machete to cut down some of the pathway. But the more we traverse the pathway in our regular life, the easier it is to find the path and walk it. And so prayer not only is crisis management, but prayer as a regular part of one's daily habit, then I think helps people create literally the nervous system pathways, the spiritual pathways, the emotional pathways to be able to walk through and traverse that place of there is only one life. That life is God's life. That life is my life now. Here's what I claim to be true about myself or about this person or this situation. It's much easier when you have enveloped prayer as a daily part of your living versus just using prayer as, oh my God, something horrible's happened. Something's on fire. Let's pray. That it's not that you can't be effective. It's just that you are more effective the more practiced you are, as you are with anything, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that idea that's coming through for me is that then that builds faith. That builds a faith, because we might come from that place of desperation, which would be, we're human beings here having an experience. And if something's happening, then that can be a go-to reaction rather than a cultivated response of prayer, mindful praying, leaving out the begging and beseeching, knowing who and whose I am. And you're right, that takes practice, because we don't always know. I mean, at the best of times, sometimes we have to convince ourselves that God is in here and God is everywhere and God is love, because we're seeing so many things that feel and look unlike that,
right?
Somehow look unlike it in the world of effect.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember in practitioner class, that the whole week came up about, do I really believe that God is love with all of this happening, all of this stuff that I don't like the look of?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look good. So do I really believe God is love? And of course, I went through my own process of understanding that more deeply in my heart.
Yes.
And prayer can get us to that place of belief, though, can't it? Also,
it can. And it is like a muscle, like what we're talking about daily practice. It's like practicing having a muscle that you've practiced with. So when the time comes that you need to pick up that heavy load, you have the muscle to do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And do it calmly. I've also noticed that over the years of communing with the divine, of knowing that there is a power and a presence and a force that it lives itself in and through and as me, I don't get as panicked anymore about the conditions of my life or someone else's. Even in urgent and emergency situations, I find a calm comes over me that allows me to not only stop, drop, and pray, as some people would say, that's one of my teachers used to tell us to do, okay, stop, drop, and pray, but allows me to be attending to an emergency situation and all the while feel this calm within me that I might be looking right at you and talking to you and helping you to calm down. But inside, the prayer's already started. My eyes are open,
Yes.
and there's an inner part of me affirming and knowing there's a power and a presence and a force right here and right now operating in and through and as me and as this situation, this person, and each of us are guided to the highest and the best outcome as we deal with this bleeding person or this person who's fallen or this person who's very upset or whatever it might be. There's a calm within me. And I think that that's one of the greatest gifts of all. I've often said that we have a lot of things we want in life, but I think the greatest gift that any of us could attain is the knowingness, the deep abiding knowingness that no matter what happens in my life in the world of form, I am partnered with a power and a presence that can meet any and all conditions and can be triumphant through any and all conditions. That there's nothing in the universe that when I've got this sense of spiritual confidence within me that I can't be with and meet. And therefore it takes away a level of fear and panic and stress and ongoing what if, because then I don't even need to play that game. I can do everything I can in my own world to create the highest and best outcomes that I prefer. But when something comes along that I don't prefer or that is scary to me, I can meet it with the same confidence that I would meet with a glorious sunrise, you know, and say, okay, what are we going to do about this? How are we going to be with this? How are we going to move through this? Wow, this isn't exactly what I expected. Let's figure this out. There's a spiritual confidence and calmness that comes with a person who's a practitioner of prayer. That's the name. Like practitioner, you mentioned practitioners. I say they're practitioners because they're people who are practicing this on in their daily lives, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I've met many people that are not labeled as practitioners and are still practicing it in their daily lives.
Absolutely. Yes, they're in our world. There are licensed practitioners.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
And so, how then has prayer? I mean, I love this because we're really talking about in the moment where there might be, you know, a response or a reaction experience going on that's causing us to use that we can use prayer in situations that just seemingly come out of the blue, like, oh my gosh, this is happening. And then what about in life as we're, you know, as a science of mind student, practitioner, newly licensed minister, I still know the power of prayer for actually shifting the bigger picture experience of my life, and allowing prayer to be that beautiful vehicle that I can use to do that to have that co-creative experience with, where there's something greater that I want to experience for my life. How do we remain in that faith when we might not see or experience that happening yet as our demonstration?
Well, there are two things. I think one we've already sort of started to cover, which is that ability to be in daily practice of prayer, no matter what's going on. People see prayer as a negative, sometimes meeting negative conditions. But I also say to people, if you've got something that's going really well, you've got a wonderful relationship with your beloved partner or spouse, why not pray for an even deeper connection, an even greater experience of love? You know, so that kind of daily prayer can be helpful. And I also think that one of the things that was a genius of the founder of our teaching, Ernest Holmes, is that before he ever created the office of minister, he created the ecclesiastical office of practitioners that we've been speaking of. And the reality is that there are times, no matter how well practiced I am in prayer, no matter how calm I want to think I am, things occur in life, and I cannot, even after I've been in Science of Mind since 1980, So for many, many years, where I just can't quite see around the problem. I often joke in classes about, it's like I have this hand in front of me. Here's the problem. And no matter how hard I try, I cannot see around it. All I see is that problem, is the challenge. And so one thing that I think that practitioners are one of the greatest gifts for is that Ernest Holmes knew that about us. And he knew that I can't see the hand, but right now Laura's sitting there looking at me, and though she sees my hand there, it's not consequential for her. She still is very able to imagine a picture of me without my hand in front of my face. And so seeking out others who will stand as witness to us, because we believe in the oneness of all life and the connection of all life. When I can't have faith myself in my own word, and I'm scared or I'm stuck, I can go to my practitioner or prayer partner, and I can have faith in their faith. And I can surrender my challenge to them and say, please, will you pray for me? And in that moment of surrender, I've actually lowered the hand a little bit. I've just said, okay, I'm going to have faith in your faith. And then they, in this loving bubble of connectedness, can continue to pray for me. And I think that often also helps us have a level of relief and surrender, and let ourselves be helped by other people, which is a concept of abundance in the universe, and one of the best things we can ever do, that is so important. So that's why in our faith, in our practice, practitioners of this teaching are so vital. I believe in the power and the force of practitioners. And I've had a prayer partner. I have a ministerial colleague who's a prayer partner of mine, and we meet every week. And I love praying with my prayer partner. I love praying for her. I love that she prays for me. I always know that I have that someone who can support me. So it's also letting yourself be supported, I think, is important.
Oh, thank you so much for saying this, because as you're saying, I'm thinking, yes, it's letting go of control as well, knowing that we're not the one in control here, and handing that over to another person who is also God, emulating, and we're letting go of control of the whole situation. And as we do that, the problem just seems to miraculously dissolve. And the prayer partner piece, yes, what a blessing that is, to have a prayer partnership.
Yes.
And to be able to have that weekly connection, sharing and feeling that we're not alone, because it can feel quite lonely at times for all of us, can't it?
Yes. Yes. And I think often, I think those of us in the spiritual teaching who know that we can use the power of our word to change our experience, sometimes are a little more ashamed of the problems and challenges that we have, because we think we should be able to pray them away ourselves. And I think other people suffer from this also in other faiths, or just in life itself, that a lot of what keeps humans from authentic connection and authentic receivership of help and support is we just think, oh, I can't tell them that I've got this problem.
Shame.
What will they think of me? Shame, right? So I think that's another brilliant thing that Holmes realized, is that to sit before you and look at you and say, this is what I did, this is what I said, this is what's going on through me. That in and of itself, which people are so loath to do at times, unearths the hold that thing has on us, to just, even the thing we're most afraid to say to another person. So sometimes it can help to pick a practitioner that you don't know so well, so that you can say, I'm going to tell you what I did or what I said or what's happening because I'm so ashamed of it or I'm so embarrassed by it. And the telling unearths it, and then it lets it kind of be like that feeling you have, like, oh, I'm so grateful. Oh, I'm not holding that secret anymore. You know, the 12 steps always says we're only as sick as our secrets. And sometimes I think that that's a first step in using prayer and a prayer partner to help us to heal. It's just to be seen even when we don't want to be seen.
Thank you so much for sharing this, because I think for me and for so many people, there is a feeling that of when we ask that we're weak, or that there's something going on that we need to hide. and keep it to ourselves. And actually, it's in the sharing that we can relieve ourselves of that burden.
Yes.
To grip onto it and have control.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Think that we've got control.
I think that's one of the I was raised in my childhood Catholic, and I think that's one of the things that that the Catholic tradition is getting at with confession.
And that's just what was going on with me. I was going to bring, yes. And practitioners are just this beautiful, angelic kind of field of light of, it's okay.
Yeah. They are duplicating the nature of God. And that's the hard part too, is that in our own heart of hearts, many of us keep our own prayers going, have conversations with God about the thing that we're most ashamed of, but we're not entirely sure that the God of the universe actually forgives us or loves us, even though we've done X, Y, and Z. So to bring before another human being, especially as you say, a practitioner who's well-versed and well-practiced in duplicating the nature of God and being this unconditionally loving presence. I mean, I often feel like being a practitioner is the easiest thing in the world because and I worked hard in my practitioner training, as I know all of our practitioners do, to get over my judgments and my own stuff so that when someone comes before me with a problem that they have, that I'm not sitting there going, oh my gosh, I can't believe they know. Now, of course, there are things that if someone brings that are illegal that we have to report, just like any other faith tradition. But that also is a level of accountability and consequence that I think is important for people. So, but by and large, most of the prayers that and issues that people bring are things that they're just not sure, has God really forgiven me for this? But to sit before that other human being and experience that love like you're talking about, and have someone so be free of judgment and pray for us and support us. Oh, what a gift that is. That is a huge gift right there.
What a gift. And that's like a almost a placebo effect.
Yes.
Just to hand that over, say it without any judgment, of feeling any judgment, and then to feel that relief can shift it completely, because we then are sure that we're accepted by another and not being judged.
Right.
I think judgment is a big piece, isn't it, for us as a whole, collectively, universally, that we carry this mass consciousness idea that we're being looked down upon, picked on. Some are better than others, some are worse than others, and that there will be a judgment day.
Yeah. The human systems that we have, which, I am not dissing them at all. We need agreements, mutual agreements that have consequences. So I'm not saying any of that is wrong, but I do think that we project that onto God and have for eons as human beings. And I know that our teaching has a different articulation, and my own personal experience. And I think a lot of us who have been in this teaching, the experience that we have that's a true north energy of the divine is an absolute unconditionally loving presence. Now, there are consequences that are born out of the human rules and out of the choices that we make with thoughts and actions and words and deeds. Absolutely. But God is not lobbing those onto us. Those are happening because of our own energies that we're projecting forward, whether they're energies of harm or energies of contribution. We get back what we put out. That's just the way this universe works. It's not like God going, well, I'm going to smite thee kind of thing. But that's how humanity has seen it over the years. And so you're absolutely right. I think it is a great gift to stand in the basking love of another human being that can be with us and say, okay, I hear you, I see you, and who do you really want to be? Do you want to continue being that person who is angry all the time, or who yells and screams at their kids, or who is so unhappy? Who do you really want to be? Let's work on that.
So what brought you into science of mind in the 1980s? What was it that kind of was that piece for you that led you in?
It honestly was a teenage rejection of the faith tradition that I was practicing at the time. I have come to have a sweet spot in my heart for all faith traditions, including Catholicism. But at the time, as a teenager, I experienced what I call like 3 strikes and I was out. I felt I felt
I can resonate.
I felt a different articulation of God than I was told by my Sunday school teachers for a long time there. I felt an intuitive sense that whatever God was, that it was an accepting God of all beings. And my teachers would say that was true, but then also tell me if people weren't in my tradition, they were going to hell or they weren't accepted by God. And that never jived with my little child's heart. And then as I grew older, there was some violence in my family, and I felt like the priests sort of sided on my father, who was a violent man and very rage filled. And I felt like they didn't support my mother in words or actions. And that bothered me. And then when I was 13, I, who was very questioning about faith naturally, was basically kicked out of catechism because I asked too many questions. And I remember walking home that day from being kind of humiliated in my catechism class for just being curious and saying to myself, I think I'm done with Catholicism. And I went home and I told my mother, and my mother is very open and very philosophical. And so she and I started a 2-year search for what we kind of articulated and believed would be true about the universe. And I read a book that really talked about how God is everywhere and how all you have to do is knock and the door shall be opened unto you. And I said to my mother, isn't there a tradition that believes this? And she said, no, there's no faith that practices this. And I was rather disappointed. And she said, and if there is, they're like they're out on the fringe people. And
the fringe people, I love it.
And my mother was a practicing realtor here in Denver, Colorado at the time. And she had some interesting theories about life. And this realtor friend of hers said, you ought to go try that Science of Mind church down there. And so she got me to come. I was 15. She got me to come by saying I could drive the car if I went with her, which was a big deal at that time. So I got to drive and I went with her and I walked in the doors and I knew I was home. This was my spiritual home. That was it. I knew it immediately. And I haven't left since then. And next week, or in a couple days, I turned 59. So I've been a in Science of Mind since I was 15 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Been a great gift.
How incredible. And ministering for so many years in so many different ways. It's so exciting, your journey. What has been the inspiration for keeping that light going, for being a minister?
Well, I think it's continuing to feel and sense the power of this teaching. I think, like you and pretty much every other practitioner or minister in this movement and in this faith, I have seen lives changed and transformed. I have seen what others would call miracles occur in people's lives. I've experienced in my own life. And still continue to this day, as I think has been in me most of my life from the time I was a child, this connection to a divine presence that I know is in me and everywhere. And I don't think I'm special. I think it's in everyone. I think it's in everything. And I am grateful that I have continued to feel it and continue to nurture and deepen that relationship to that inner voice within me, that inner sense of my own divine nature. And that, more than anything, continues to propel me forward, because I feel like if every human could feel and sense their own divine nature, we'd have a different planet. People would make different choices in their interpersonal life, in their relationships, and in the ways that they serve in the world. And so I am passionate about helping people make the discovery of their own inner divine nature and spiritual magnificence, for sure.
Yes. And also, as we do this for ourselves, we're one.
Yes.
We're one. So we're uplifting ourselves, everyone else, everywhere, because we're one. So this isn't a me, although we might think we're praying about something for ourselves, we're actually, this prayer is for humanity and beyond. It's infinite.
Yes.
That for me is the piece that I love.
Yes, me too. And if you think about the steps of prayer, those first two steps, like you're saying, every time we go through them, we're setting off, if you think of our life like a rock in a puddle, every time one of us stops to remember that there's only one presence and it's God, and that presence, that divine life is right where I am, there's an expansion of connection to the universal energy that's always present here. That is like dropping a rock in a puddle, and there's a reverberation that reverberates out into our life and then is felt by anyone whom we share this life with. So you're absolutely right. Being of spiritual practice like this is not a selfish act at all. It's an awakening act that helps us to awaken ourselves, which then inspires others to do the same. So yes, most definitely contributory practice for sure.
So where we might feel that the world is falling apart and everything, you know, and there are horrific things that are happening on many, many levels. I can't even just say one thing. And it's like, there's so many different facets to this. And do you believe in the power? I mean, I know what I'm just asking you. I'd love you to share on this. Do you believe, Reverend Michelle, Reverend Dr. Michelle, that the power of prayer, that the more of us that use prayer and that know this truth and that actually consciously connect with this connection on a daily basis, once, twice, maybe 3 times a day, do you believe that that can actually like be the tipping point for a transformation for humanity?
I do absolutely believe, and I also often think outside the box around some of that. Like right now, let's talk about the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and some of the ways that people spend their time so angry at, for example, Putin, which I totally understand. I've often theorized and wondered if enough of us prayed and sent that man light, would that have more of an impact than us complaining and being afraid and angry at what he's doing? I don't like what he's doing at all, and I don't agree with what he's doing at all. And I never will agree with anyone who uses violence to harm another group of people to get what they want. I don't agree with that in any way, shape, or form. But I also don't think that we do much by continually complaining and grousing about it, but we do a lot more by being willing to send light to it. And so I like to use the news and those negative things that are going on as my call to prayer, to say, okay, if I'm going to watch the news, what is my prayer today? Anything that triggers me, anything that bothers me, anything that trips me up, that's what I need to pray for. And I'm sending a huge amount of light to Putin today, that he is awakened into love and to peace and to connection with life, and may or may not be successful in that, but I feel like that does more for me and more for the good of the world and the universe than the other choices might be. And so yes, I do believe that there's a generating of energy that can shift things and cause things to shift and change, but we have to be willing to practice them, and it's not always easy.
That's the piece, isn't it? Being willing to practice them and look at something and say, this too is God expressing. I may not like it, and yet I can come from love, rather than even knowing, oh, this will be love one day. I can know love right now, and come from that place of infinite possibilities, that anything can change.
Yes.
And have that. That's the magical place, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
Yes, most definitely.
And so I'm just really interested, would you love to share, or would you be willing to share a demonstration that's happened for you in your life? Because you know it's from the power of prayer and using prayer.
Yes. I would say in this past year, I was very blessed to go on this wonderful trip with my congregation that we had planned for a long time and had been put off for the, COVID reasons and pandemic reasons. And we finally got to go, and it was an amazing adventure. And when I came home, people always asked me, a lot of people for some reason asked me, what was my big, where do I want to go next? What do I want to do next? And I was saying to people for a few years, my number one bucket list idea was an Egypt trip. And so I started saying, I'm going to pray about Egypt. I feel that I'm supposed to go to Egypt. And so I started praying. I started seeing myself there. I started having feelings about I literally would close my eyes and I would imagine the pyramids of Giza, and I could feel the energy of them in my gut. Like I could just feel a connection to them. And then one day, rather unexpectedly, I thought I'll go to Egypt in a few years. I'll go to Egypt in a few years because after all, I just went to Europe. I mean, gosh, that's a lot in 1 year. I went to Europe for 3 weeks. I'll go to Egypt one day. But I opened my email and there was this invitation from a colleague that I love and respect to consider going on a minister's trip to Egypt. And it was like that gut inside me went bing, 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 bing. And the timing was rather good for my life. And I talked to my husband. I said, I want to do this. And we had a way to do it financially and time-wise and everything. And I talked to my partner at Mile High and said, I'd like to do this. What do you think? And we talked about it, made an agreement about it. And I just, boom, made it happen. And it was an answered prayer. It literally was this thing the thing that I loved about it is it wasn't forced. I didn't even set a time frame on it. I just had in my head, like, eventually I will go to Egypt. I just knew it, but I didn't think it would be like that. And it ended up being like that.
And isn't that the amazing thing? I'm so pleased that you brought this up, because that's when it happens, when we let go and we don't even consciously think, oh, I'm praying and I'm letting go. It's just, oh, that would be nice. That would be cool.
And the thing that I love, that I want to say also about this prayer stuff, is that our teaching is called religious science because Ernest Holmes believed there was a scientific aspect of this, that anyone could do a prayer and apply that idea and have results, that it wasn't that the results that occur are no respecter of persons, that everyone can create prayer treatments. So when we first start out with experimenting with this, our prayers might be rather specific. Like I had a client years ago as a practitioner, she wanted $100 extra every month to pay her bills. That's all she wanted. And I remember saying to her, well, would you like to maybe explore having a more expanded consciousness of abundance so that you just always have what you need? Nope. She said, I want the $100. And I said, okay. And that's what we prayed for. And so after a while of the $100 showing up every month after month after month after month, I remember she said to me, what was that thing you said about 8 months ago about that expanded consciousness thing? And so then we started going that direction. So our teaching, people may think that we're a little bit selfish, and that sometimes when we're first starting out, we do pray for a little bit more specific things. But I have found, like with this Egypt trip, as I grow in this teaching, I'm much less attached to the specifics of when and how and with whom. It's just more of I'm affirming and accepting. That's mine. I accept it. I embrace it. I'm a yes for that. And I know that it's unfolding in my life perfectly. Boom. And then it does.
Oh, it's beautiful. And you must have had an amazing trip. It must have been, because the prayer would have continued all the way through the trip.
Yes.
And back home again. Yes.
Most definitely. Yes, because the minute the trip became available, then I said, well, let's set an intention for the trip then.
Yes.
And so that went with me too.
Reverend Dr. Michelle Medrano, thank you so much for being here today on the Cosmic Prayer and sharing and inspiring me and the viewers. If you're inspired, then leave your message here for Reverend Michelle. We'd love to know who you are, where you are. Whether you have any questions about prayer, then now's the time to pop that into the comments. And also to know that, we do pray here three times on the network. We're a prayer ministry. We have regular prayer time happening. And I know from my own experience how prayer can absolutely, even if I think it's not changing the effect of my life, is changing something within me where I after that prayer I can relax.
Mm-hmm.
It's like okay, I can relax and allow this to happen. So what would be one thing you'd like to say before we exit here to just inspire people to actually take up a prayer practice, or if it's something they're not doing right now, maybe something that they can do to cultivate that sense of connection within themselves?
I would say that in my years in ministry, when I have worked, especially with people in classes and practitioner training, the one thing that people will say made the most difference that they were skeptical about when they first started doing the disciplines of our teaching was daily prayer practice. And I would say that I have more people than anything say to me, that made a difference in my life more than I thought it ever would. And so I would say to people, just try it. Try saying to yourself, I'm going to do a daily prayer practice for 30 days, and then I'm going to reevaluate. Do I feel like my life is better? Do I feel more connected? Do I feel more at peace? Or try it for a week or 2 weeks and just try it and assess, and try it and assess. And I predict that in practicing, we'll probably feel a greater sense of peace and well-being. Give it a shot.
Yes, yes. And peace and well-being are absolutely, they're crucial.
Absolutely.
They're crucial because they can ground us and allow us to have a sense of clarity for our lives.
Definitely.
Reverend Michelle, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
On the Cosmic Prayer.
It's been fun.
Would you like to share a prayer here on the Cosmic Prayer?
What would be the purpose of the prayer? That's one thing we always get.
What would be the purpose? Mm-hmm. I know, always set a purpose. So for me, I believe it is peace and well-being.
Okay. All right. That sounds good.
What about for you?
Always wanting peace and well-being, for sure.
Always wanting peace and well-being. Okay.
Okay, great.
So I'd like to just begin. I'll begin the prayer, just set us in with the recognition and unify, and then hand it over to you.
Okay, sounds good.
Perfect. So for everyone also that's here and present, even if you're watching later on, that's absolutely perfect. This is an invitation for us to come closer. Close our eyes if that feels good for you. And breathe in this beloved breath that I know is the breath of the divine. Goddess, God, love, spirit, creative intelligence, infinite wisdom. This ineffable essence, whatever it is we call this and name this and label it as, I know it as this thing itself, the ground of all being, the idea of all of life. It sets in motion this spark. And I know that right now, that this thing itself is present everywhere. It is omnipresent. It is here where I am in the UK, where Reverend Michelle is, wherever you are. It is absolutely ineffable. This essence that is love, that is life and light, as it knows itself and shows itself in this world made manifest. I see this and I feel this as I look at the sea and the sky, and I feel the wind on my face when I'm out walking. I know this as God, all of it as God. And so I know that God is here right now, showing itself, being itself, living itself in, as, and through me. For I know that oneness is here. I am one, as one. And I know that this thing itself loves me. That as I open my heart and lift in my mental equivalent to the knowing of who and whose I am, that I be this love, that I be this peace and this well-being. And of course I know this, as we are one, for Reverend Dr. Michelle, for each of us here, that God is right here, right now, loving everything. And so as I know this, I hand this over to Reverend Michelle with this love, as this love.
And I accept and affirm that each person within the sound of my voice now is enrolled and embraced in this beautiful connected prayer that Reverend Laura has just spoken, and that we each are anchored and centered in the acceptance of a greater peace and well-being in our lives. I accept and affirm that right now there is a knowingness, an invitation, an urgency within us that guides us forward into that which will support us in experiencing that greater peace and well-being. For some of us, it might be an action that we must take, a thought that we must think, a way that we must love or appreciate or support ourselves or another. But whatever it is, I accept and affirm that we are each in our own way inspired and uplifted and called into the truth of who we are, which is this peace and well-being that guides us forth into living our life fully, completely, wholly, and joyfully. And I accept and affirm that it is clear, that it shows itself willingly and joyfully to us, and that we are beautiful, open receptors of this great good that is the true nature of our being. I'm so grateful that this is the truth of us right now. I'm so grateful this is the truth of Reverend Laura, of myself, and of each one here now. I know that this prayer supports and uplifts and is activated on behalf of those who are here with us live now in this moment or at any time, for there is no limit in time or space. And therefore, I'm grateful for the good that God is as us and that God is as wellness and peace right here in our lives. I simply release this prayer now in absolute faith and trust that as it has been spoken, it is done, it is complete, it is so. I let go, I let God, and so it is. Amen.
And so it is. Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Michelle Medrano, for being here. Such a blessing. Thank you for inspiring us all here on the Cosmic Prayer today.
My pleasure.
It's been amazing.
Wonderful conversation. Thank you.
It's great. And thank you for everybody who's been viewing and watching and listening. And you can catch more of the Cosmic Prayers on YouTube and stay here also. Actually, stay here for now on New Thought Media Network, as we have Practicing Prayer, another program coming up after this, and Your Doula for Grief with Bonifa Gonzalez. So that will be an inspirational broadcast as well. And of course, the network, you can check out more of New Thought Media Network here on our website, and the donate button is here if you feel called to be woven into our vision and mission, sharing these teachings with people around the world online. So thank you again, Reverend Dr. Michelle Medrano, for being here on the Cosmic Prayer. Bye for now, everybody.